Hello and welcome. Kent is known as either the Garden of England or the Gateway to Europe, depending on who you speak to. Famous for oast houses, orchards and the White Cliffs of Dover. Kent is located in the southeast corner of England, and the operation of the East Kent Road Car Company Limited is unsurprisingly in the eastern part of this county. If you draw a line from Faversham down to Hastings, that's the traditional operating area of East Kent. East Kent Road Car Company Limited was formed in 1916 by the amalgamation of 5 local companies, which between them owned 72 buses. Now, the person behind the amalgamations was somebody called Sidney Gark, who was the son of one of the founders of the BET Group, and they had been operating from a base in Deal since 1908 under the guise of Deal and District Motor Services, which had become part of BAT in 1910. The other operators involved in the merger were Folkestone District Road Car Company, which was started by Thomas Tilling in April 1914, Margate, Canterbury and District Motor Services, Watcher and Co. of Herne Bay, and George Griggs of Ramsgate. East Kent became part of the Tilling and British Automobile Traction Group in 1928, and the Southern Railway subsequently purchased an interest in the company. In 1942, ownership reverted back to the British Electric Traction Company. Expansion came to East Kent in the 1930s with the acquisition of London and South Coast Motor Services, which was in 1933, and then on the 1st of January 1937, East Kent buses replaced Dover Corporation trams. Later that same year, they also took over the services of the Isle of Thanet Electric Supply Company, which operated trams around the Isle of Thanet. During the 1930s, the company bought Dennis's and Leyland's, but they also bought a batch of Morris commercial double-deckers, which I don't think I actually saw anywhere else at all, to be fair. During the Second World War, Kent found itself very much on the front line, and the East Kent area became known as the Busman's Malta. A lot of the former frontline coaches were commandeered by the military, and the buses that remained and were in service were quite regularly strafed by the Luftwaffe. On the famous White Cliffs of Dover, buses heading towards Capel-le-Fern or heading towards St Margaret's were observed by the Nazis across the channel, and if they were spotted, they were shelled. Many company buildings and vehicles were damaged and destroyed during this period, and many staff lost their lives. And it's a great tribute to the staff who worked at East Kent during this period, how they managed to keep the services running to some kind of normality. After the war, the Dennis Lancet became the East Kent standard single-decker bus. For their double-decker requirements, East Kent initially took Leyland Titans, but then standardised on Guy Arabs. The first Guy Arabs arriving with wartime utility bodies. In 1959, however, East Kent switched allegiance over to AEC and started buying AEC Regents, and this is the type of vehicle that is more widely associated with the company. The first batch in 1959 were full-fronted, and with their PFN registrations soon became known as Puffins. They were bodied to a very handsome design by Park Royal. Later, Park Royal bodied AEC Regent 5s turned up, but were to a conventional half-cab design. And although they were handsome vehicles, they lacked the curvaceousness of the original PFN batch. In 1962, East Kent also took a batch of 3 AEC Bridgemasters for a route in Dover that passed under a particularly low bridge. Unlike neighbouring Maidstone and District, who took large batches of Leyland Atlanteans from the late 1950s, East Kent persevered with the front engine design, the first rear engine double-deckers not arriving until 1969 on a Daimler Fleetline chassis, again with Park Royal bodywork. Now, the result of this was that when one-man operated double-decker buses became legal, East Kent didn't really have any suitable vehicles. They had various AEC Reliances as well as some rebuilt Dennis Lancets for the single-decker fleets. They also converted AEC Regents to one-person operation. Most of the 1968 batch All of the 1966 batch and some of the original PFM batch were converted to one-person operation, but this wasn't really that popular with some of the unions at some of the garages. So East Kent acquired a large batch of former Southdown Leyland Leopards to aid with the one-man operation schemes at Folkestone. East Kent also took later batches of AEC Reliance and some AEC Swifts as well, including these very attractive Alexander-bodied ones, which were delivered in 1972 and were the last ones to actually wear the East Kent maroon and cream from new. During the 1970s, under the National Bus Company, the livery was changed to National Bus Company Poppy Red. During this period, East Kent took the standard National Bus Company vehicles. It built up quite a large fleet of Leyland Nationals. It took a batch of Eastern Coachworks bodied Leyland Atlanteans before settling for the standard Eastern Coachworks bodied Bristol VR, although it did share an order with Willowbrook bodied Bristol VRs with Northern General Transport. During the 1970s, East Kent and neighbouring Maidstone and District were basically run as one company, with the traffic departments of both companies being based deep in East Kent territory in Canterbury. Various vehicles were swapped and exchanged between the two fleets on a regular basis, and indeed at one point it looked like the two companies were going to be fully merged and renamed Northdown. To assist with the management of running both of the fleets, the East Kent fleet was numbered in May 1977. Now, Maidstone and District had long had a numbering system for their vehicles, but this was something new to East Kent, with them relying on the number of the registration rather than a particular fleet number. Great care was taken when ordering number plates to make sure that there was no clash of numbers. The East Kent fleet numbers showed single decks were numbered in a 1000 series, the double deckers in a 7000 series, with coaches in an 8000 series, and this was designed to work with the existing Maidstone and District scheme. This numbering scheme actually lasted well into the Stagecoach era before Stagecoach implemented their own national numbering scheme. East Kent had always run a large coach fleet in addition to their bus fleet, and again this was something that was maintained all the way up to the Stagecoach takeover. East Kent coaches could be found on all sorts of things: private hires, continental tours, UK tours and holidays and excursions, as well as the company's express services, which eventually came under the banner of National Express. In fact, I'm currently running a fundraiser at the moment to try and save and repatriate to Kent one of the MCW Metro liners that East Kent used to operate. I'll put a little link in here at the top for you to follow. By the 1980s, the National Bus Company was looking at selling off its subsidiaries, and this saw the end of the close working partnership with Maidstone and District, as both companies were prepared for sale. On the 5th of March 1987, East Kent was privatised once again when the National Bus Company sold it off to a management-led buyout. In line with the trend of the time, East Kent took a large batch of Ford Transit 16-seat minibuses. They also took Freight Rover Sherpas as well, with the majority of these being bodied locally at Folkestone by Dormobile. And these were used to implement minibus schemes in most of the main towns and the city of Canterbury. During the early days of privatisation, East Kent adopted an italic EK fleet name, and this was hastily stuck over the National Bus Company double N logo, with all the vehicles initially staying in National Bus Company livery. However, they soon launched their own new livery, and this was based on the old traditional East Kent maroon and cream, and this livery was eventually applied to all the buses as well as a form of it on the coaches, while the minibuses were in bright yellow. During this time there were various changes to the company's timetables around the operating area, and this saw the need for more double-decker buses, which saw second-hand Leyland Atlanteans coming from Northern General and Greater Manchester, and brand new Metro buses being delivered in 1988 and 89. More new buses arrived in 1990, and these were Northern Counties bodied Leyland Olympians. The initial batch of 10 in 1990 was followed by 14 more, and these were the last buses that were delivered to the independent East Kent Road Car Company before the takeover by Stagecoach. Now, when we talk about these former National Bus Company subsidiaries, it seems a lot of them seem to be losing money, but this wasn't the case with East Kent. They had a lot of success with tendering and were returning an annual operating profit of more than £1 million. And the downside of this was it was attracting a lot of interest in the bus industry in general. And one of those companies was Stagecoach. In 1993, Stagecoach made a bid of £4.3 million for the company, which was accepted. Stagecoach took over East Kent in September 1993, and before too long, the maroon and cream livery was swept away with the Stagecoach stripes. But to give Stagecoach credit where credit is due, they invested heavily in new vehicles, with Leyland and Volvo Olympians joining the fleet, as well as Volvo B10Ms and later low-floor Dennis Darts. They also introduced new routes, and some of these were branded routes such as the Kent Compass, the Kent Clipper and the Dickensian, although these particular longer distance routes were later scrapped. But branded routes such as the Thanet Loop and the Canterbury, Whitstable and Herne Bay triangle services still operate, and are very successful too. There's also a unibus operation that links Canterbury bus station with the University of Kent and Canterbury. And after a break of many years, open top buses returned to Ramsgate when the 69 service was reinstated. And while the operating name has changed from Stagecoach East Kent to Stagecoach in East Kent, before finally becoming Stagecoach South East, the legal company name has been retained as East Kent Road Car Company Limited, which is nice. We are lucky that East Kent is quite a popular company, and there are many examples of East Kent buses in preservation today. And aside from preservation, there's still a number of East Kent vehicles that survive. A couple of notable examples being an AEC Regent that is in the Dolomite Mountains and is used as a ski cabin, as well as Chepstow Classic Omnibuses fleet of Bristol VRs, which includes several East Kent examples. If you'd like to find out more about preserved East Kent buses, I recommend paying a visit to the Friends of the East Kent website, or indeed just visit their Facebook page. Friends of the East Kent are actively preserving 5 former East Kent buses, 2 Guy Arabs, an AEC Regent, a very rare AEC Bridgemaster and an AEC Swift. And we are always on the lookout for volunteers to get up close and personal to our old ladies. And that's not the sort of offer that you get every day, so I'd take full advantage of that if I were you. Details of how to contact us are on the website and on the Facebook page. I hope you've enjoyed this East Kent version of National Bus Company Histories. If you have, please like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my future releases. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.